When most people think about heaven, they picture something passive, an eternal vacation where we lounge on clouds and strum harps, with nothing much to do but drift in peace. Soft music, bright light, no pain, no problems. But also, let's be honest, no real purpose. And for a lot of people, that version of heaven doesn't feel like paradise. It feels like retirement on repeat. It feels dull. But deep down, our souls were made for more. We were created to build, to serve, to explore, to grow, and to love with intention. That longing for meaningful engagement doesn't just disappear when we leave this world, it gets fulfilled in the next. If heaven is the culmination of everything we've lived for, the reward of a faithful life, shouldn't it be filled with vibrant purpose, overflowing joy, and deeply satisfying activity? What if heaven isn't a place of less purpose, but of more? What if all the potential you never had the time, resources, or strength to fulfill on earth finally finds its perfect expression in eternity? Think about it. God is a creator, a designer, a builder. He didn't make you just to sit around in the afterlife and wait for the next angelic concert. He shaped your heart for mission, your mind for wonder, and your spirit for connection. And heaven is the place where all those things finally come alive, without limitation, without fear, without end. So maybe it's time to shift the narrative. Maybe heaven isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's the beginning of the one your heart has always been aching to live. Let's dive into the beautiful truth that Scripture, logic, and experience whisper to us. In heaven, you won't just exist. You'll live, you'll work, you'll grow, and you'll thrive. Forever. Purpose is not a seasonal idea, nor is it a fleeting human ambition. It is eternal, anchored in the very character of God, stretching far beyond our earthly years and deeply embedded in the divine rhythm of heaven. From the very beginning, Scripture doesn't just tell us what God created, but why. The book of Genesis opens with a breathtaking picture. The Spirit of God hovering over the deep, bringing light out of darkness, order out of chaos, beauty out of the formless void. And then, God creates man and woman, not just to exist, but to do, to partner, to steward, to cultivate. Before there was sin, before there was sorrow, before there was death, there was purpose. Adam was not created to be idle in a paradise of ease, but to tend and keep the garden, to name the animals, to walk with God in the cool of the day, and live out his divine assignment in the presence of perfect love. That tells us something radical about heaven, about eternity, and about the very nature of life itself. That meaningful work, sacred responsibility, and divine purpose are not the result of the fall, but part of God's original blessing. We often imagine heaven as a place of eternal rest, and it is. But rest in the biblical sense is not the absence of activity. It's the presence of wholeness. Rest doesn't mean retirement from purpose, it means alignment with God's design. In fact, one of the greatest misunderstandings about the afterlife is that we will simply float in clouds or sing without end, detached from all sense of engagement or growth. But the more we study Scripture, the more we realize heaven will be a place not just of worship, but of wonder, not just of celebration, but of continuation. Because if God never changes, and He delights in purpose, then our eternity with Him will be full of divine purpose too. Revelation tells us that His servants will serve Him, Revelation 22:3, not out of obligation, but out of joy. The same God who wove purpose into Eden will weave purpose into eternity. And that means what you do, who you become, how you grow, it all matters. It means your gifts are not just temporary tools, but glimpses of eternal design. This changes how we see everything. If purpose is eternal, then it's not just about what we do for a paycheck or even what we do in ministry. It's about how we live, how we love, how we reflect the image of God in every season of our existence. Eternity doesn't begin when we die. It begins the moment we step into God's grace. That means your eternal purpose is already unfolding, even now in the details of your daily life. You may feel like your job is mundane or your routine is repetitive, but in the kingdom, nothing done in faith or love is wasted. Every act of obedience, every quiet sacrifice, every moment of faithfulness is shaping you for forever. That is the hope we anchor ourselves in, that this life is not a random sequence of disconnected days, but a training ground for eternity. And even when doors close, when plans shift, or when dreams seem delayed, it doesn't mean your purpose has expired. It simply means God is refining it for something even deeper. And here's the beauty of it. Your purpose is not fragile. It doesn't shatter when you make a mistake. It doesn't vanish when people walk away. It doesn't depend on popularity, perfection, or performance. It's rooted in the unchanging nature of God. That's why the enemy fights your sense of purpose so hard. Because he knows that if you ever understand how eternally valuable your life really is, you'll stop living small. You'll stop shrinking to fit into other people's expectations. You'll stop questioning your worth based on earthly success. And instead, you'll live with boldness, with eternity in your heart, and with heaven as your compass. You'll begin to ask different questions, not "What do I want to do?" but "What was I created to do in the light of eternity?" Not "How can I be seen?" but "How can I serve?" Not "How can I make life easier?" but "How can I make life meaningful?" In God's economy, the smallest seed can become the largest tree. And your eternal purpose often grows in hidden places, in prayer closets, in hospital rooms, in lunch breaks filled with quiet encouragement, in the way you raise your children, love your spouse, honor your parents, serve your church, or forgive your enemies. All of it echoes in eternity. The world tells you to hustle for significance, but the kingdom invites you to receive it. Your significance isn't something you earn, it's something you were born with. Not because you're perfect, but because you're chosen. Not because you're loud, but because you're known. Not because you're successful, but because you're faithful. And one day, when you stand before the Lord, He won't ask how many followers you had or how impressive your resume was. He'll ask if you were faithful with what He gave you. And that faithfulness, that's your purpose in action. Even in eternity, this idea continues. Imagine heaven not as an eternal vacation, but as an eternal restoration. Think of the joy of creating without comparison, of building without burnout, of serving without striving, of learning without limits. You were made in the image of a creator, so in heaven, creativity doesn't end, it flourishes. You were made for relationship, so in heaven, community isn't lost, it deepens. You were made for joy, so in heaven, joy doesn't fade, it explodes into fullness. That's the kind of purpose God is preparing you for. And that's why the way you live now, how you steward your time, your talents, your trials, it all carries eternal weight. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 4:17 that our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. That means nothing is wasted. Not your waiting, your weeping, or your wondering. Every moment has meaning when God is in it. So don't believe the lie that you're just getting through life until you die and go to heaven. You are being formed for eternity, step by step, decision by decision, and you don't have to wait until heaven to start living like it. Right now, you can walk with purpose. You can live with intention. You can say yes to God's assignments, even when they're inconvenient or uncomfortable. You can speak life, even when you feel overlooked. You can give generously, love radically, serve humbly, because you're not living for applause. You're living for legacy. And in God's kingdom, Legacy isn't measured by what you leave behind, but by what you build for eternity. That's why Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven." Matthew 6:19-20. Because heaven is not the end of purpose, it is the fulfillment of it. If you're still breathing, you're still becoming. And if you're still becoming, then God is not finished with you. Even if you feel stuck, uncertain, or exhausted, your purpose has not expired. Maybe it's shifting, maybe it's deepening, maybe it's calling you out of comfort and into something bolder, but it's still there. Because the same God who spoke purpose into Adam, who called Moses out of the wilderness, who restored Peter after his failure, who turned Paul from persecutor to preacher, that same God is speaking purpose over you, right here, right now. And his purpose doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't get buried under your past or blocked by your present. It runs deeper than your feelings and stretches further than your future. It's eternal, and so is your identity in him. There's something deeply sacred about the way your soul lights up when you're doing something that matters, when your hands and heart come together in purpose, when your efforts, though quiet or unseen, feel like they're building something eternal. It's in those moments, when you're mentoring someone through a tough season, when you're finishing a project that stretches your creativity, or when you're simply using your gifts to serve someone in need, that you catch a glimpse of something heavenly. That sense of inner satisfaction you feel, that quiet joy, that surge of energy that flows not from applause, but from alignment. It's no accident. That was God's design all along. You were not created merely to survive or to coast through life in comfort. You were made to contribute, to reflect the creative heart of your Maker through work that has eternal weight. This is why laziness never feels like true rest. It might seem pleasurable for a moment, but it never satisfies the soul. You may binge a series or sleep in all weekend, but eventually your spirit begins to ache, not for more escape, but for meaningful engagement. Because deep down, your soul knows it was made to move in harmony with purpose. Even in seasons of rest, the fulfillment doesn't come from inactivity. It comes from balance, from knowing that you've poured out, and now you're being filled again. That's the rhythm of grace. And it's not just here on earth. Sometimes we mistakenly believe that heaven is one long, endless vacation, clouds, harps, choirs, and eternal leisure. But that picture, though well-meaning, falls far short of God's vision. The Bible is clear that heaven is a place of glory, order, worship, and purpose. And if purpose has always been part of God's plan, if Adam was given meaningful responsibility before sin entered the world, why would heaven, a place of perfect redemption, be void of it? On the contrary, heaven is the full expression of God's original intent, not the absence of it. Your gifts, your calling, your passions, these weren't just temporary tools for this life. They were the fingerprints of eternity stamped onto your spirit. They are eternal echoes that won't be silenced by death. In heaven, those gifts will no longer be hindered by exhaustion, pride, comparison, or fear. There, you will create, build, explore, and serve with clarity, energy, and joy, not out of pressure, but out of pure delight. Imagine it, using your creativity without the fear of failure, speaking words of encouragement with no trace of insecurity, leading without ego, following without resentment, serving without depletion, giving without needing to be noticed. Every act of contribution becomes an act of worship, not a transaction. Every role you fulfill becomes a reflection of God's goodness, not a competition for worth. In heaven, your contribution won't be measured in performance, but in love. And love never runs dry. You won't need validation, because you'll live in the presence of the one who already called you chosen. You won't strive for approval, because you'll know you already belong. You'll contribute not to earn your place, but because your place is already secured, and from that security, joy will overflow. And maybe that's hard to imagine, especially if your current reality is filled with burnout, fatigue, or the ache of being underutilized. Maybe you've spent years doing things that drained you, that weren't aligned with your gifts, and now it's hard to even imagine a version of work that doesn't feel like weight. But that's the promise of heaven. It doesn't erase your past, it redeems it. The tasks you performed in obscurity, the dreams you never saw fulfilled, the work that went unnoticed, it all mattered. Nothing done in love is ever wasted. And in heaven, you will see that. You'll see how every faithful act, every kind word, every seed planted in secret was seen, counted, and remembered. And you will finally be free to live out the fullness of who you were always meant to be, without the chains of exhaustion, comparison, or insecurity. God is a builder, He's a creator, and we were made in His image. That means you're longing to build, create, nurture, solve, and serve. It's holy. It's not just a personality trait. It's not just ambition. It's divine design. When God formed you, He didn't just give you a body and a name. He gave you a purpose, a unique way of reflecting His nature into the world. And though sin may have distorted that reflection, it did not destroy the design. Your contribution still matters. And one day, when all things are made new, your gifts will find their perfect expression. You will not be bored in eternity. You will be more alive, more awake, more aligned than you've ever been. Picture a world where every song is sung with joy, not performance. Where every invention reveals beauty, not just utility. Where every act of leadership is motivated by love, not power. Where every helper is honored, every builder is celebrated, and every voice is heard. That is heaven. That is the kingdom of God in its fullness. And you have a place in that kingdom. You have a role to play. Not because God needs your help, but because He delights in your participation. Just like a parent invites a child to help in the kitchen, not because the parent can't do it alone, but because the process is a bonding one. God invites you into His eternal story, not for efficiency, but for intimacy. In heaven, you won't work for approval. You'll work from love. You won't serve to gain identity. You'll serve from a place of identity. And that changes everything. Even now, you can begin to glimpse this reality. When you serve others without needing anything in return, when you pour into someone's life and feel more alive because of it, when you use your gift and time seems to disappear, that's heaven's rhythm beating in your soul. That's the Spirit reminding you, this is what you were made for. This is what you'll be doing forever, only in fullness, only in freedom. So if you've ever felt that restlessness, that sense that you were made for more, it's not ambition. It's eternity calling. It's the whisper of heaven reminding you that your contribution doesn't end here. The best is yet to come. And if you've ever doubted your worth because your gifts weren't recognized or your work wasn't rewarded, let this be your comfort. God sees, God remembers. And heaven will be the place where everything hidden is honored, where every act of faithfulness is rewarded, not with trophies or titles, but with joy unspeakable. The kind of joy that comes from finally doing what you were created to do, in the presence of the one who created you to do it. In that place, your soul won't ache for more. It will overflow. Because you won't just be with God. You'll be in step with His heart, aligned with His purpose, thriving in His joy. You were never made for idleness. You were never designed to drift. You were built for impact, crafted for contribution, shaped for significance. And in heaven, all those threads will come together into a beautiful tapestry of eternal purpose. Your story won't end in rest alone. It will continue in joyful, creative, vibrant participation with the kingdom of God. And every part of you, your talents, your passion, your compassion, your endurance, will find their perfect place. You won't just be fulfilled, you'll be fully alive. One of the most breathtaking realities about heaven, a truth that shatters all earthly comparisons and quiets the noisy anxieties of our competitive culture, is that in eternity, the concept of significance is completely redefined. On this side of life, we are often caught in the relentless race of measuring value by visibility, importance by influence, and greatness by grandeur. But in heaven, different doesn't mean unequal. Roles are not ranked, they are simply perfectly suited. In God's eternal kingdom, there are no second-class callings, no overlooked lives, and no forgotten labor. Instead, each person stands in the fullness of who they were always meant to be, embraced by a joy that is not borrowed, not comparative, and not diminished by the role of another. The joy of the gardener is just as vibrant and fulfilling as the joy of the one entrusted with cities, because in heaven, no one feels less than. No one wonders if they missed out. No one measures their worth by what another has been given. There, joy is whole, satisfaction is complete, and purpose is perfectly aligned with how God wired each soul. Jesus, in his parables, gave us glimpses of this eternal truth, not to feed our curiosity about heaven's structure, but to stir our faithfulness on earth. In Luke 19, he paints a picture of a nobleman who entrusts his servants with resources, each according to their ability, and returns to reward them not just based on results, but on responsibility embraced with diligence. "Well done, good servant," he says, "because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter. Take charge of 10 cities." It's an awe-inspiring image. Think about that. Faithfulness in the quiet corners of this broken world somehow translating into real responsibility in a place where nothing is wasted, nothing is corrupted, and every detail pulses with divine meaning. In heaven, what you sow in tears here, you will reap in joy there, and what you do with a servant's heart now will become a song of glory forever. But even more surprising than the reward itself is what it reveals. God doesn't measure success the way we do. He measures trust. He honors obedience. He cherishes purity of heart over power of performance. That means that the stay-at-home mom who rocked her babies to sleep with whispered prayers and faithful patience may be entrusted with nations in the life to come, not because the world noticed, but because God did. The man who quietly served in his community, away from the spotlight but close to the Spirit, may be given roles in eternity that reflect the depth of his stewardship. And the person who faithfully prayed in hidden places, carrying burdens no one saw, will be celebrated in a kingdom that remembers every single seed of faithfulness sown. Heaven is not a reward for ambition, it's a restoration of purpose. And in that place, even those who felt small here will stand tall, not in pride, but in the pure delight of being seen, known, and fully alive in their God-given design. But there's something else powerful to consider. In heaven, fulfillment is not tied to function alone. It's fused with relationship. There's no striving, no burnout, no chasing approval, no fear of being left out. You won't feel a need to prove anything, to compete, or to outperform. Because there, the presence of God is the source of satisfaction, and the role He gives you is simply an expression of that joy. And here's the beautiful twist. The one planting flowers in the fields will be just as filled with awe as the one ruling 10 cities, because both are doing exactly what they were created for. There is no jealousy in heaven. The gardener doesn't envy the city builder because the joy isn't in the scale, it's in the sacred alignment between identity and purpose. What you do flows from who you are, and who you are has finally been made whole in Christ. This perspective shifts everything. It means that right now, The way you show up in your current season matters far more than you think. Because eternity remembers faithfulness, not fame. It remembers humility, not hype. It honors the quiet yes when no one else sees. The small obedience, the unseen sacrifice, the gentle words spoken in love. All of it echoes forever, and not one moment is wasted. You're not just preparing for retirement. You're preparing for rulership. You're not just surviving life's chapters. You're being shaped for heaven's assignments. And those assignments won't be boring. They won't be monotonous. They'll be tailored to your redeemed passions, your holy curiosities, and your sanctified dreams. You'll build without fatigue, create without insecurity, lead without ego, and serve without resentment. Your role in heaven won't be a shadow of your earthly life. It will be the radiant, unburdened expression of your soul's deepest design. And maybe that's what Paul meant when he said, "Do you not know that we will judge angels?" 1 Corinthians 6:3. That's not just poetic language, it's prophetic insight. In the age to come, God's people will reign with Christ, not in some abstract way, but with real purpose. Our roles will be glorious extensions of our earthly stewardship. Our joy will not be rooted in comparison, but in communion. We'll finally get to do what we were created to do, in an environment that doesn't frustrate or fatigue, but fuels and fulfills. No broken systems, no injustice, no weariness. Just the sweet rhythm of eternal usefulness grounded in unshakable peace. And what a comfort that is for those who feel unseen right now, for the ones who wonder if their quiet work, their hidden faith, or their unnoticed obedience matters. Heaven shouts, yes, it matters, more than you know. Because God is watching, and He is not unjust to forget the love you've shown, Hebrews 6:10. He will honor every tear cried in intercession, every burden carried in silence, every small act of love that never made it to a stage. The roles you're being prepared for are eternal, and the training ground is now. So don't despise the small things. Don't underestimate the power of perseverance. And don't think for a second that your purpose ends when your time on earth does. It doesn't end. It transforms. It deepens. It explodes into fullness in the presence of the one who assigned it in the first place. And when you finally stand in that place of perfect peace, where the Lamb is the light and every soul is whole, you won't be trying to climb higher or earn more. You'll be resting while rising, serving while celebrating, contributing while constantly being filled. It will be joy without striving, authority without pride, purpose without pressure. And you'll finally understand. The goal was never to be better than anyone else. The goal was to be faithful with what you were given. And in heaven, faithfulness becomes a fountain of endless joy. So if today you feel like your role is small, if you're tempted to believe that what you do doesn't matter, remember this: God is not looking for the most talented, He's looking for the most trustworthy. And what you do in love, in faith, and in hidden places will not only shape this world, it will echo into the next. Your reward isn't just in heaven, it is heaven, where the different roles we are given don't divide us, but unite us in perfect joy, where your crown doesn't make you proud, it makes you bow, where your assignment isn't a burden, it's a blessing, and where your soul, finally free from comparison, can say with peace, "This is exactly what I was made for." In a world that often values knowing everything, it's easy to imagine heaven as the ultimate destination of knowledge and understanding, a place where we finally have all the answers to the universe's mysteries. But what if heaven isn't about knowing everything all at once? What if it's about endless discovery, where even eternity itself is filled with the wonder of learning, growing, and experiencing the infinite nature of God's being? God is infinite, and in his infinite nature, there is always more of him to explore. This truth suggests that even in heaven, our learning does not stop. It simply expands. Just as the human experience on earth is marked by growth, learning, and deepening understanding, so too will our experience in heaven. But in heaven, this growth won't be hindered by human limitations like fatigue, forgetfulness, or doubt. In fact, everything about our exploration of God's beauty will be amplified, untainted by the frustrations that often accompany our earthly quest for understanding. Imagine a life where every moment brings you closer to the heart of God, where every revelation of his nature sparks a new joy and a new desire to learn more. Imagine a space where you can explore and ask questions without fear of judgment or the constraints of time, space, or human imperfection. Heaven is not the final end of learning. It is the continuation of an eternal process of growth, one that does not grow tiresome or stagnant. The joy of discovery will never wear off. Instead, it will increase. Each new layer of understanding will open doors to deeper and more profound revelations about God's character and the eternal truths he embodies. Theologians like Jonathan Edwards, a prominent American preacher and philosopher, envisioned heaven as a place where our joy would continually expand as we learned more about the beauty, majesty, and mystery of God. Edwards believed that even in eternity, we would never exhaust the knowledge of God. There would always be new aspects of his nature to explore, new depths to plumb, and new wonders to behold. This endless pursuit of knowledge and understanding would not lead to frustration, but to greater joy. In heaven, knowledge won't be something that overwhelms or burdens us. It will be something that continually fills us with awe and delight, helping us draw nearer to our Creator in profound ways. In contrast to the limitations we face on earth, in heaven, we will be free to explore and learn without any of the mental fatigue that so often accompanies our earthly existence. We won't have to deal with the frustration of forgetting things, the exhaustion that comes from trying to understand things with limited faculties, or the pride that sometimes clouds our desire for true wisdom. We will be able to experience God's beauty without the distortion of our finite human nature. In heaven, there will be no more confusion or doubt, only pure, untainted wonder. Our understanding of God will expand infinitely, and this growth will be the foundation of our eternal joy. Picture this: a life where every conversation, every thought, and every moment reveals a new layer of truth, where you continually discover more about the Creator of the universe and are constantly awed by his goodness, grace, and power. The idea that there will always be something new to learn in heaven is not just a theological notion. It's a source of endless hope and excitement. It tells us that even in eternity, we won't ever be bored or stagnant. We won't hit a ceiling where there's nothing left to discover. Instead, we will always be growing, always discovering, always deepening our relationship with God in ways we can't even imagine now. This concept of eternal learning and discovery also speaks to our human longing for meaning. We are designed to seek, to question, and to explore. On earth, these desires often leave us searching for answers, for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. In heaven, that longing will not cease, but it will be fulfilled in ways we cannot yet comprehend. Every day will be filled with new revelations, new experiences, and new ways to know and love God. We will never reach the end of this journey. Instead, it will continue beautifully and infinitely as we grow closer to God and experience more of his eternal love. This endless expansion of learning won't just be about the acquisition of knowledge. It will be about transformation. Each new insight into God's nature will lead to personal transformation. As we grow in knowledge, we will also grow in character, becoming more like Christ, reflecting His goodness, beauty, and holiness. We will be constantly transformed by the things we learn, and that transformation will be a continual source of joy and fulfillment. We will experience the fullness of life that God originally intended for us, a life where our minds are constantly being renewed and our spirits continually made new. The beauty of this concept is that it allows for a deeper connection to God that is not limited by time or understanding. Imagine experiencing the fullness of His love and glory without the barriers that our finite minds create. Imagine having the freedom to explore and grow without any hindrance, always learning, always growing, and always finding more joy in the process. It's a powerful and beautiful picture of what heaven can be, a place where learning never ends, where we continue to grow in knowledge and love for God forever, in an environment that is perfectly designed for us to thrive. So, when we think about heaven, we must not just imagine it as a place of rest or a place where everything is static and complete. Instead, we must see it as a place of continuous, boundless growth, a place where the joy of discovery never fades, and the wonder of learning about God's beauty continues to expand. In heaven, there will be no end to our journey of learning, and that journey will bring us closer to God in ways we can only begin to imagine. Heaven is not a destination where knowledge is finished, but a journey where the depths of God's love and wisdom will forever be explored. As we grow in knowledge of God, we will experience greater joy and fulfillment, and we will continually be transformed by His infinite beauty and wisdom. This eternal growth is not something to fear, but something to look forward to, for it promises an eternity filled with wonder, joy, and the deep satisfaction of knowing God more fully than we ever could on earth. Heaven isn't just a destination of solitude or isolation, it's a celebration of community, collaboration, and divine connection. So often, our earthly existence is filled with relational brokenness, misunderstandings, betrayals, distance, and ultimately, death. These painful realities cloud our experience of love and unity, making it seem almost unattainable at times. But in heaven, everything changes. The barriers that once separated us, whether they were emotional, social, or even physical, are completely removed. There, love flows unbroken, pure, and undistorted. The challenges and struggles that marked our relationships on earth will be gone, leaving only harmony and a deeper, more profound connection with one another. Imagine the joy of being in the presence of not just God, but all the saints, everyone reconciled, fully themselves, fully known, and fully loved. There will be no awkwardness, no strained silences, no more misunderstandings or tensions. Our hearts will be completely open to one another, understanding and cherishing each other as we were always meant to. We will be free of the fear of rejection, the pain of betrayal, and the weight of brokenness. All the barriers will fall away, and in that perfect unity, every interaction will be filled with perfect love, understanding, and grace. We often think of heaven as a solitary paradise, where each of us finds our peace and fulfillment. While that is certainly true, there will be a deep, personal connection with God. We must also remember that heaven is a place of community. It's about being together. It's about building relationships that are not just meaningful, but eternal. In heaven, we will work, create, and collaborate with others. The differences that once divided us will no longer exist, and the imperfections that once caused friction will be swept away by the presence of perfect love. There will be no jealousy, no envy, no pride, just pure joy in being with one another and sharing in the work and creativity of God's eternal kingdom. Think about how many times you've tried to accomplish something meaningful on Earth, only to encounter obstacles in the form of misunderstandings, ego, and personal limitations. How many times has the collaborative process been tainted by pride or competition? In heaven, the very concept of rivalry will be gone. Every person will bring their best, not for recognition or reward, but for the pure joy of creating something beautiful together, each person finding fulfillment in their role without comparison to others. There will be no need to compete for attention or approval. Instead, we will celebrate each other's contributions, knowing that every gift is valuable, every effort meaningful. The joy of collaboration will be magnified by the presence of God, who will be the ultimate source of inspiration and purpose. The fact that we will be doing all of this with Him, at His side, only adds to the beauty of heaven. No more seeking approval from others, no more feeling unnoticed or insignificant. In the perfect unity of heaven, we will find the truest sense of belonging, where our individual contributions are valued and celebrated, and where our work together is an act of worship. The idea that our work could be a form of worship is a beautiful one, for it means that everything we do in heaven, whether it's building, creating, leading, or serving, will be done with a sense of reverence and joy, honoring God in all that we do. While we often think of calling as something that we strive to fulfill during our earthly lives, in heaven, our calling will not be erased or forgotten. Instead, it will be brought to its fullest potential. The dreams, passions, and desires that God placed in your heart will find their ultimate expression in heaven, not limited by the constraints of time, space, or human frailty. Perhaps there is something that you've always longed to do, some calling you've always felt stirring within you, but for whatever reason, you've never been able to fully pursue it here on earth. In heaven, that calling will be fulfilled. The work that you began, whether it was building relationships, pursuing a passion, or serving others, will be perfected in the presence of God. The dreams that seem too big to realize on earth will be fully realized in the eternal realm. But even more importantly, you'll be able to do it without the distractions, frustrations, or feelings of inadequacy that so often cloud our earthly experiences. This sense of restored calling is not just about fulfilling a task or achieving a goal. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be in the perfect environment of heaven. Your work will no longer be tainted by the weight of earthly failure or regret. It will be marked by divine grace, joy, and fulfillment. And as you fulfill your calling, you'll do so in perfect harmony with others who are also walking in their God-given purposes. Together, you will build a world that reflects the beauty, creativity, and love of God. In heaven, you'll find that your purpose is not something you have to strive for or earn, but something you're invited to participate in freely, without fear, without regret, and without the limitations of time. It will be a place where your calling is not just something you do, but something you become. You will be fully who God created you to be, and in doing so, you will contribute to the greater glory of God and the fulfillment of His eternal plan. It's important to remember that God's plan for you doesn't end with this life. Heaven isn't the end of the story, it's the fulfillment of it. It's where everything you were created for comes to completion, and where you'll experience the full realization of God's eternal purpose for you. So, as you think about heaven, don't just picture it as a place of rest and comfort. Picture it as a place of vibrant, joyful, and purpose-filled work. It's a place where you will not only experience deep and meaningful relationships, but where you will also find true fulfillment in fulfilling the calling God placed in your heart. It's a place where your life's work and the purpose that He placed within you will reach its final and most beautiful expression. This is what makes heaven so beautiful. It's not just about escaping the pain and suffering of this life. It's about finding the ultimate fulfillment of your purpose and calling in the presence of God, surrounded by those who are walking in the same divine harmony. It's a place where the relationships you've longed for, the work you've always dreamed of, and the calling that God has placed on your heart are all brought to their perfect fulfillment, in perfect peace and perfect joy. In heaven, the relationships that were once broken will be restored, and the calling that you've carried throughout your life will finally come into its fullness. And this is just the beginning. For eternity will not be long enough to fully experience the beauty of the purpose God has for each of us. But in heaven, we will have all the time in the world to discover it, live it out, and experience the joy of fulfilling the calling we were always meant to fulfill. This vision of heaven, where relationships are restored, where calling is fulfilled, and where God's eternal purposes are brought to their perfect completion, is a picture of true peace, joy, and fulfillment. It's not just a hope for the future, it's a promise from a faithful God who delights in seeing us flourish. As we await that day, let us hold on to the truth that our purpose isn't just for this life, it's for eternity. Think of this life as a prelude, the warm-up, the internship, the training ground. Everything you've done here, every act of service, every moment of faithfulness, every quiet act of obedience has been building towards something far bigger than you imagined. Your story doesn't end in heaven, it begins there. In heaven, you'll finally be fully you, not weighed down by sin, sickness, or sorrow. You'll live in a world where work is joy, rest is deep, and love is endless. You won't be running to meet deadlines or chasing validation. You'll be walking in perfect rhythm with God, fulfilling a purpose that energizes rather than drains, surrounded by peace that doesn't fade and beauty that never grows old. Heaven isn't just a destination, it's a continuation, a restoration, the unveiling of the masterpiece God's been crafting in and through you your entire life. The little moments that felt overlooked, they weren't. The sacrifices no one applauded, God saw them all. And one day, you'll see how every thread was part of a greater design, eternal, intentional, and stunning. So don't live just for retirement, live for eternity. Don't merely chase comfort, cultivate character. Don't just count the years, make the years count. Because heaven isn't the reward for a life well lived. Heaven is the place where life finally begins the way it was always meant to be. And when it does, you'll realize that even your most ordinary days were echoes of a divine promise, one that ends not in death, but in forever.